After your father was killed.
Sorry if I correct you. After my father committed suicide.
Okay. How did you find out this true story about the death of your father?
Well, as I was on the phone with him, and I knew that he was committing on purpose his biggest mistake, because he always teach me not to ever use a phone line. He told me everyone I wanted to find, I wanted to kill, and I wanted to kidnap, I found them because they used the phone. That's the biggest mistake a human being can make. And because they all call their mothers, their sisters, their loved ones, or someone. They will call someone. And the phone is death. That's what he teach me for the past 10 years. And he even never used a phone. No wonder why he was never catched by the authorities, because he never used phone. He used to use pigeons, or something very like in the tools from the war, not new technologies, not cellular phones, nothing. I felt already dead. There was like no hope.
At 7 years old.
There was no hope and the energy of the places. I don't know if you believe or not in energies, but I can tell you when death is nearby, you can feel it. It's very cold, very, very cold.
Zdravo svima, dobrodošli u još jedan Agelast podcast. Pre nego što počnemo današnju epizodu, i moram da kažem vrlo posebnu epizodu, vrlo ekskluzivnu epizodu i jedan razgovor koji je vrlo inspirativan s obzirom na životnu priču našeg sagovornika, želim pre svega toga samo da se zahvalim svima vama koji ste zapratili našu YouTube stranicu, pomogli našem kanalu da raste i učinili ovaj sadržaj vidljivijim i omogućili mu da opstane. Ukoliko to niste radili, vama ne znači mnogo, nama zaista znači sve. Tako da zapratite, kliknite to dugmence subscribe u uglu i zapratite našu stranicu, pomozite našem kanalu da raste, pomozite da stigne što većeg broja ljudi i naravno lajkujte i podelite sadržaj ukoliko vam se dopada. Također želimo se zahvalimo svima vama koji nas podržavate mesečnim donacijama preko Patreona. Ukoliko želite da obezbedite dugovečnost i nezavisnost ovog podcasta, iz milion razloga je beskrajno važno, ukoliko možete da nas podržite na Patreonu. Link za Patreon se nalazi u opisu ovog videa ili bilo kog drugog videa, bez obzira na platformu da nas slušate, to jest da gledate. Takođe, ukoliko je možda praktičnije, lakše, jednostavnije ili draže, možete nas podržiti jednokratnim donacijama preko PayPala ili možda čak kriptovaluta. Linkovi za sve su u opisu ove epizode. Takođe, sve ovo ne bi bilo moguće bez naših partnera. Pre svega želimo zahvaliti našim partnerima iz Volta koji su tu verno sa nama sve ove godine, praktično od samog početka ovih podcasta i kao što znate, verovatno Volt se bavi kućnom dostavom. Ukoliko ne znate, a pretpostavljam da i vrapci na grani već znaju to, idite na sajt na sajt Volta koji se nalazi u opisu ove epizode, kliknite, idite na Volt, napravite profil na Voltu, iskoristite promo kod sa imenom našeg podcasta, ostvarite popust na prve 3 poručbine i lupite pauzu, sačekajte stigne i uživajte u razgovoru koji sledi svakako. Pored toga, naravno, želimo se zahvalimo i našem partneru iz Mazde. Stalno govorimo o tome da Mazda ima tih 5 postulata koji se činjavaju kor njihovog brenda. Oni koji je meni najdrži je lično Takumi. Takumi majstori su majstori koji su ceo svoj profesionalni vek posvetili radeći jednu stvar, trudići se da postignu savršenstvo koje naravno nije moguće stići, ali ono se odražava u njihovom dizajnu, odražava se u njihovoj ekonomičnosti, u njihovoj funkcionalnosti, u brojnim aspektima koje Mazde vozile čini jedinstvenim. Ukoliko želite da saznate nešto više o Mazdi, pogledajte više njihovih modela, link je u opisu ove ili bilo koje druge epizode na našoj YouTube stranici. Tako da hvala puno našim partnerima, hvala puno vama koji ispratite svaki put ovaj segment, jer se trudimo da nakon ovog segmenta razgovor kada počne više ga ne opterećujemo nikakvim reklamiranjem, tako da je ovo neophodan segment za naš sadržaj, ali takođe želimo da poštujemo i vas kao publiku. A naš gost ove nedelje je čovek koji ima 2 imena. Jedan je Juan Sebastián Marroquín, a drugi je Juan Pablo Escobar. Juan Pablo Escobar je ime s kojim je rođen, njegov otac je čuveni narkotrafikant, narkodiler Pablo Escobar, i on je pisao o svom ocu, pisao je o svojim životnim iskustvima i ceo svoj zreli životni vek provodi pokušavajući da s jedne strane promeni sliku o svom ocu u popularnoj kulturi, u mainstreamu, i s druge strane da se suoči sa svime što se desilo, sa žrtvama brojnim, do sada nepreglednim i zaista nikada zvanično zapisanim ukupnim brojem žrtava njegovog oca. Pokušava se suočiti sa njima, sa njihovom decom, sa njihovim porodicama i da započne put pomirenja i borbe protiv narkokartela, protiv trafikinga droga, protiv svega i svačega, i putuje svetom baveći se upravo ovim stvarima, promovišući ovakve stvari, a ovde se nalazi u Beogradu sa sličnom temom, jer je došao na predavanje gde drži predavanje o svom ocu, o svom životu i o posledicama kako je takav život ima, a između ostalog da promoviše svoju knjigu koja nosi naziv Moj otac Pablo Escobar, koja je izašla pre nekoliko godina, ovoga puta u reizdanju, i naš gost, jedan od ekskluzivnih razgovora, dakle, na našoj zemlji koju smo dobili sa njime, dakle, je Juan Pablo Escobar, odnosno Juan Sebastián Marroquín. Uživajte. We can start.
Okay, finally.
Okay. Finally, yes, exactly. So shall we, is it Juan Pablo or Juan Sebastián?
Well, it could be Pedro also, it could be any name. Because for me, a name is not important. What it defines me as a person is my actions, the kind of things that I did in the past. That's my truly real identity. So, my mother, she baptized me Juan Pablo. Now she calls me Sebas. So you can call me as you prefer, just as you remember.
Juan, because Juan. in both of those names you have Juan.
Yeah, you hit both.
Yeah, so we can use Juan then.
Yeah.
How are you? How was the trip? How do you like Belgrade so far? You've been here for the last 2 days.
Yeah.
When did you arrive?
Yeah, just a couple of days ago. So far, I found a very beautiful city, very clean compared to other cities in Europe. So I'm very excited to be here, willing to know even more the place, have some more days to stay and walk around. So I'm very happy to stay, to be here.
As far as I understood, you came to Europe only for this particular lecture, and then you're going back. It's not a tour.
No, it's not a tour. This is exclusively an event. So I come here. I've been in Europe for the last 10 days, but for vacations with my family. But now I'm here.
Yeah, one interesting thing, you went to, when we were talking, you were traveling from from Mexico to Istanbul,
and then Amsterdam,
then Copenhagen, then Copenhagen, then Amsterdam, then Belgrade.
Yeah.
So actually, I thought those countries were the part of the tour, but actually it's not. It's just your vacation.
No, it's just vacation.
Yeah,
and a lot of jet lag.
You went to see Legoland.
Well, my son is a huge fan of Lego, so he wanted to, be there in Billund, the city where it was conceived, the idea. And he's really in love with Lego, and I think that also it has a great opportunity for him to build things, to invent, and to think differently. I think it's a great toy.
Yeah. How old is your son?
11
years old. Yeah. My daughter is somewhat younger, but the thing that I'm been thinking about lately a lot is, and I'm guessing you can identify where it is, how much things can change within a single generation. When you're looking at your childhood and then looking at the childhood of your son, it's like two completely different
stories. If I compare my story with my son's, I feel embarrassed already. It's like, I see my son today. He's 11 years old, and he's not even thinking about, perhaps not even a girlfriend or something. It's just, he's a kid dedicated to study, to play, and of course, he's just starting to think about it. But when I was at the same age, I owned my apartment, and I was partying with my friends and even drinking alcohol and doing a lot of stuff that my son is not thinking about it. And so this is how I compare my life and how extreme were the circumstances in the past compared to, to my son today.
Yes, and your life story is truly one of a kind.
I don't think it is special at all. I think it's just another story that became popular because of, many things that sadly happen. But I think we all have to struggle with our own, we have to face our own destiny. We have to climb, our own Everest.
Yeah, yes, that's really true. But we're gonna address all of those things during this conversation. We don't want to jump ahead.
Okay.
So I would like to start at the beginning. Like we've been talking about the childhood, and your son and your story, and we're gonna go to your story. But let's go. I don't know where would be a nice, good starting point, but maybe the good starting point would be addressing the creation of the book, writing the book.
Yeah.
So this book, my father, Pablo Escobar, how long did it took you to write it?
Well, it took me a year, but it was I was fully dedicated to this project. And actually this book appeared thanks to my publishing house in Colombia, because of the director of the publishing house. He has his wife, literally asking him to watch the documentary Sins of My Father. For many years, she was asking him to see it, to watch it, but he didn't have enough time to do that. Once he got enough time, he called me right away when the documentary finished, and he said to me, "You have to write a book. Your story needs to be told." And so we got into an agreement very easily, and I told them I need, to have all my expenses covered because I need to fully dedicate. I'm fully committed with the possibility, but I need your help and support during a year to make it possible. And it was my first book. I never ever thought about writing a book, and also I got a lot of help from my editor because I didn't know even how to start and how can you start a book you have an empty page, nothing in there. So it was quite an exercise for me to look deeper into my own story, but mostly this is a book about my father.
Yes,
it is a book where I'm not the main character. I'm just like a witness, telling him some stories. And of course, I investigated a lot about my father. And I traveled to Colombia to meet many of his friends, at least the ones that are still alive. There's not much friends that are still alive. But, it was truly a very touching kind of experience for me because, it's like you have to rewrite everything that you remember, everything that you lived and suffered and experienced. So it was a great experience for me.
Yeah, but few things I would like to touch on that topic is, first of all, the journey of writing this couldn't be easy for you in many ways.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On the other hand, certain things had to mature within yourself in order to express them.
Yeah.
And addressing those painful things in life is a process. Yes, it's a process.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, doing the research and facing your memories, because you were very young at the beginning of this story.
Absolutely.
And you have certain feelings, you have certain memories, but who knows what percentage of them is true or not, and then doing the research is facing those memories with the reality.
Yeah, that was quite a job because, my editor was also a journalist. And I have to say that during the beginning, it's like the publishing house didn't have, they weren't so very sure about what did I knew about my father or not, because they used to say, you were a kid, you didn't saw anything, so what do you have to tell? And so I demonstrate them that I knew a little bit more than they expected. And so I asked the editor, I told him a name of one of my father's, let's call him associate. And he just quickly answered, he's dead. So I told him, oh, you think he's dead? Because it says in the newspaper that he's dead. Okay, let's go and talk with the dead guy. So once we have a conversation with a dead guy, they start trusting me that I knew more about my father than they expected.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about this interview, and I thought about this interview a lot, there's a conflict of things, you know. On one hand, we all know who Pablo Escobar was and what kind of a man he was, but your story is completely different. And facing those two stories creates a new space that I think we all need in life, you know. Facing the situation head on, you know, and making conclusions and creating your own path in life. But at the same time, your position is very interesting because you are somehow stuck in between worlds. You know, you have a world that you were born into. You didn't choose your family, you didn't choose your father, you didn't choose the destiny that you had. Yeah. But you can choose your own path once this destiny was over.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was your father.
Yes.
He was your father. And from
and a loving father also.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say. And at the same time, a loving father. From the perspective that I got, from your perspective that I got from the book, he was a very loving father.
Yeah.
So you had a loving father figure and loving family.
Yes.
You wouldn't be the way you are if it wasn't like that. But on the other hand, you had
not
all those
much
atrocities.
people understand what you just said, you know, because I am the man that I choose to be now because of the love that I felt when I was a kid between my family. So that is very important for our lives.
Yes.
Many of the cases that we know about what we call bad people, you know, bandits or sicarios, or if you ask them, many of them have suffered like a lack of love inside their families when they were kids.
Exactly. And I'm very interested in that perspective. You know, how do you make peace being stuck in between the worlds? You know, so you are part of the world that you don't belong to, but you are part of the other world that you don't belong to either completely. You know, there's many things in life.
Yeah, I feel like an alien, you know,
Yes.
in the whole world, because it's like a lot of people wants to know me because of their curiosity, but they also suffer about their own prejudice against that. So it's like I don't know where I should be exactly, but I know that if I would ever thought about taking my father's place, I will be dead already, you know, and I will have no future for me. And I'm not that kind of guy. I'm sorry that I disappointed perhaps, you know, the U.S. citizens, because they would like me to have another Pablo Escobar, the 2.0 version of my father. But, you know, they cannot count with me on that, because, you know, I'm a different person. I'm a pacifist, and I choose. And, you know, I think that my father's biggest lessons, it's that he showed me the path that I shouldn't take as a human being. You know, he showed me the wrong way to do things. And I'll be insulting my life, my own life and experiences, if I just follow his own examples, you know. I think that his examples are there and here in this book, not to repeat them and to learn from them.
Yeah. How old were you when you found out? Well, you're saying it in the book, I know, but I want you to, you know, to tell me the story. How old were you when you found out that your father was, as you say, bandito?
Well, he called himself a bandit, you know,
Bandit,
and that was that's what the way he seems himself. I was 7-year-old, and it just happened that he ordered. 7 years old. Yeah, he ordered the killing of the Minister of Justice in Colombia, and we flew to Panama. We escaped from the authorities, and that was exactly the place where he just called me, and we sat down, and he said to me, "Hey, look, son, I am a bandit, and this is what I do for a living." But of course, he didn't explain me deeply what he was doing, and you are a kid of 7-year-old kid. Yeah, we all understand the meaning of the word bandit, but I was just, thinking about a kind of guy who was like riding a horse and, stealing money from the banks, something like that.
Yeah.
But actually he was running the biggest criminal organization of the past century.
Yeah.
He was considered and I'm not proud of this, but he was considered the Da Vinci of crime. And that is like too much to take.
And things went worst, from bad to worse from that point. From that point on.
Every day of our lives.
And also, I was thinking about someone like Pablo is, I don't know how to put it, but someone who would probably do these sorts of things, doesn't matter the location, the circumstances, but the circumstances that he was born into and raised into kind of created a perfect storm for him. The spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, and the circumstances in the country at the time, it's something that is not very, it's not talked about so often. So I would like you to, go through these early days of, him and your mother before they knew each other, from what kind of families they're coming from what kind of poverty, and what were the political and social circumstances at the time creating this environment when someone like him could be raised into.
Well, actually my father, he was forced to abandon his own land with his brothers and sisters and his mother.
He had like 7 brothers or sisters?
Yeah, eight
of them.
Total. And that happened to 5 million families in Colombia, not to his family exclusively.
Yeah. That was in the 60s?
Yeah, because of there was a political fight between the 2 biggest parties, and the liberals and the conservatives. And they were literally cutting their heads with machetes in the rural areas. So they were forced to leave their home and went to the city to find opportunities. And my father, at the beginning, he wanted to study. He wanted to be an accountant or a lawyer. But he, I think he didn't have enough patience to wait for that. And also, it was a real lack of opportunities for guys like him. And then, prohibition starts somehow. It was there already, but cocaine was just like starting. Cocaine, let's say that it appeared to the world, even if it existed before, thanks to an article that it was published, if I'm not wrong, with Newsweek magazine. That is, it says the headline like cocaine, Hollywood's new caviar. So after that article, a lot of people wanted to try the new caviar.
Yeah.
That it was called like that. So for me, it was like something that I wouldn't. My father saw the opportunity also. He started smuggling with home appliances, alcohol, tobacco, all the stuff, bribing the police and doing that stuff. So he, very fast he figured out that, he could have the same issues or problems to face, bribing the authorities, if he were, just smuggling TVs or cocaine. It was the same. They didn't want to open the boxes. He just paid them to let them pass.
Yeah.
So he started with the very small business, and at the same time when he arrived to the neighborhood, he met my mother. And my mother fell in love with him, and that's a true love story, because my mother never married the Pablo Escobar we all know today. She married the poorest man in the neighborhood. But the guy with less future, that was the guy that my mother married.
Yeah, but she was also too young,
Very young, absolutely, very young.
Yeah, 13 years old or something like that.
Yeah, 13.
When they met.
When they met, and they got married when she was 15, actually.
Yeah. And her family, because not so much is known about, your mother and her the way she was brought up, and about her family is not much talked about. But what's her story?
About my mom?
Mom's story.
Well, actually, I encouraged her to write her own memoirs, because I told her, look, if you don't write your own story, someone else will do it for you. And it won't be accurate. It won't be, kind of story that you would like to see about yourself, because it would be full of lies. So I told her, you should do it before anyone does. And thank God that she heard me, that she really allows me to collaborate with her in her project. And now she published her book. It's been, published like in past 2 years, and it's been translated in 6 languages already. So it's, but the pandemic started, and it was like difficult to promote the book, but now it's like starting over.
So this one particular story about Pablo is now getting different perspectives.
Yeah, and I may say that, I thought that I knew everything about my father until I read her book. Of course, I wanted to leave her privacy to write her own memoirs without me interfering, and I just gave her a couple of advices. Now that I had 2 books and a comic book written, is something that I can tell at least how to start and how to handle some things. And I knew the same editor, same publishing house. It was like an easy process for me. It was like a 3rd book for me.
Yes.
But I heard, and I may say also that her stories changed and my way of thinking about my father.
In what ways?
In many ways. I thought that he was a more kind guy than I expected, and he wasn't. It's like I was also a fan of my father as a son, not a fan of Pablo Escobar.
But fan of your father.
Fan of my father. I love my father, and I was even willing to die for him until I read her book.
And then you had a different perspective.
Now I have a different one.
Now you have a... so this is also a very interesting thing, because your mission at the same time is also shattering this myth, this image of Pablo that you have through popular culture.
Yeah.
Because popular culture is very much painting him as some kind of anti-hero.
Absolutely.
In many different shapes and forms, and this is one of the beefs that you have with mainstream, let's say, film and TV series industry.
Yeah.
The way they portraying
glorifying him.
Glorifying him.
It's like glamorizing his own life, adding some kind of a special effects to his life that unfortunately are being misunderstood by kids all around the world, and they see my father today as a success case. And I truly believe that he shouldn't be seen like a success case, because he was not. He died when he was very young. He wasted his talent and his money and his life, and he ruined a lot of people's lives also at the same time.
Thousands of people.
Yeah.
Thousands of people.
And, there's not a list, not even an official list of my father's victims.
Yeah.
Nobody ever dared to write them or not. I don't know why. Perhaps, I don't know what the real reason. I don't know what it is. But I think that there's a law in Colombia that it's been there to repair the victims. So I think if we make a list, the repairment would be so expensive.
Yeah.
And nobody could take care of that. Yeah. And unfortunately, my father's assets that were seized by the authorities, corruption took control of everything. So there's nothing left that can be used. And there was a lot of money seized, and properties, and helicopters, airplanes, and big terrains in all Colombia, buildings that could be sold or given to my father's victims to repair them.
Yes, and this is also one of the things that's very important for people to understand regarding Pablo Escobar's story, is that the circumstances were the ones who also at the same time made it all possible. Because the corruption was so big.
And prohibition, that's the biggest sponsor. I must say that my father is the son of prohibition. And I'm not trying to justify his actions at all. I'm just saying, as you said, the perfect storm for him was prohibition. Thanks to prohibition, he made a lot of money. A lot of, every single weekend, millions of dollars come into his pocket. So he was, thanks to that political situation, because nobody was even paying attention to that. There was no controls at the airport. It was not after the, September 11. It was many years before that. So it was very easy for him to smuggle the drugs into the United States.
Yes. So this is one thing that I don't think how many people realize now, especially the younger audience, because before September 11. Traveling via planes was a completely different story.
Absolutely.
Completely different story. There was no rentgens, no checkups. You could follow somebody through the gate almost to the plane to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody cared. It's like going to the bus station. It was like as easy as that, very open. And also there was corruption. And there was a big opportunity for my father too. And with the articles saying that he was selling the new caviar. Yeah. So it looks like not a harmful way to cocaine, how it was presented to society, and many stars, and in the movies also, as they drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or consume cocaine, it's a way to encourage others to do it because they put it in a very glamorous way, like in Scarface or something like that.
Yeah, as they call it, the social lubricant.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that social lubricant perhaps is more cannabis than cocaine. Cocaine may put you in a mood that could make you fight with others.
Yes, that's true. That's
Paranoid.
very true. Yeah, that's very true. And paranoia is something that was a big part of Pablo's life later on. But not because of cocaine, but because
because of his own decisions.
Yes, of course. And before before 9/11, there was a completely different approach to security at the airports. But even before that, in the 60s and the 70s, it was even easier than in the 90s. Because nobody knew what cocaine was.
Absolutely. The authorities weren't prepared to attend this situation. And, and I think that this is an opportunity also to speak about, the perfect storm is still there. My father passed away 30 years ago, and the perfect storm is still there. And, even after September 11, and that brings the question, how come after September 11, that I don't travel to the U.S. because I don't have a visa, but I see in every airport that every plane that is going to the U.S. has a double X-ray. They checked everything twice. So how the drugs are still arriving to the U.S.?
Yeah. Well, it's a big business.
No, it's corruption.
It's corruption.
And it's always been there because corruption is not a Latin American thing. It's a human thing.
Yeah.
But we are being portrayed like, the Latin Americans, they're corrupt.
Yeah.
But we are corrupt, perhaps, but who's more corrupt?
Yes, and let's address a couple of things more within the popular culture. For example, when Netflix show Narcos was aired, you had issues with it.
I didn't. They do have issues with society because they are, creating a new generation of kids that are willing to be like my father because they portray him as a hero, because they portray him as a success case.
Yeah. And also, you wrote an article in which you stated 28 mistakes that...
Just of the second season. If I wrote the mistakes of the first season, it'll take me a book to do.
Yeah, and after reading your book, I realized that there was many things portrayed very wrong. And I would like you to address just the most important ones. For example, your mother and or the participants of your uncle, right? Participation, of your uncle, and certain other things that didn't really happen in real life, but could.
Let me give you an example. It's like there's a scene where my father is with my little sister next to a fireplace, and she's like a bit cold, and my father is worried, and so he throws like $2 million to the fireplace. Come on, man! It's like, are we stupid or what?
Yes.
If we are we live in a tropical country,
Yeah.
So there we don't have much fireplaces over there. And among all those things, we have woods,
Yeah.
and you can use this to throw to the fireplace instead of, if you have $2 million in cash, will you throw them
Yeah.
into that place, or will you use your table for that?
Yeah.
Or your chair, or your, curtains, or whatever. You have several things, or books, to
Yeah.
throw to the fireplace. So this is a perfect example of how they would like to glorify my father and to show that he has so much power that he could even, burn the money.
Yeah. It's like
because he didn't care, but he did care about the money, and it's the kind of details that really make a difference in how my father is being portrayed. Because the big difference between the series from Narcos and my book, I can assure you this, let a kid watch the show Narcos and he will like to be like my father. And after, let him read my book, and I assure you that he won't be having those crazy ideas of becoming like him.
Yeah, glorifying.
That's the great difference,
yes,
there's responsibility that we use to tell our stories.
Yes, and this example that you mentioned kind of paints a picture of over-the-top characterization they were putting in order to portray him or glorify him as some supervillain, which creates an opposite effect in society. Yeah, and there's also other things in your book that kind of contradict the picture that we have about him and the official history, which is very interesting, especially when we come to the Palace of Justice siege and the way the whole thing started, which we're going to talk about later on. But there's also another thing, the other things like certain details in this book which were previously unknown, and for the first time ever, I find out about them in this book. For example, you're mentioning Frank Sinatra in at one point, some early in the book. Will you tell it? Will you tell the story?
Well, he was a great singer, and no one can deny that. But some of my father's associates had some business with him, and they used to say that he delivered more drugs than songs. That he was very, very good at the drug trafficking business. That's a story that I heard inside the Medellin cartel.
Yeah.
And there was no need in that kind of atmosphere to lie about that. If they were saying that, it's because it was true.
Yeah.
And it was very easy. And if I don't want to spoil Frank Sinatra's image. And back in those days, and I don't want to justify his actions at all, but back in those days, the drug trafficking business wasn't seen as bad as it seems today. It wasn't so demonized as it is today. So and even there's a word that changed. There was they were called smugglers, and that in a criminal range, it looks like a less dangerous type of criminal who would not like to pay taxes or do something like illegal, but not as harmful as it is seen today and according to the law today. So in those times, it was like something that looked more natural, even between our society in Colombia. It was like, okay, he's a smuggler, but it never look at that kind of guys like, oh, be aware and take care because you could feel in danger. No, that wasn't the kind of situation. Because as we spoke, during the beginning, there was no controls. The authorities weren't prepared for that. So it was very easy for my father to achieve his own goals.
Yeah, and at this point, we should say that, Frank Sinatra was part of the eastern United States, east coast of the United States, and upper east side, the New York State. And your father didn't do business over there; he was doing it in Florida, right?
Well, actually,
at the time.
I talked with a guy who was running some of my father's business to ask if there was some kind of a struggle or a fight between cartels. I want this corner is mine, and he said. there was a lack of drug dealers, not a lack of corners, because he used to say every single kilo that arrived to the United States right away could be sold by anyone could buy it. It was very easy for them to sell it. There wasn't enough drugs to feed the North Americans in those times. And about Sinatra, well, that's the thing I know and that I heard. And a lot of artists are part of the business even today. And I remember that my father received many letters from many different Latin American and international artists, asking him if they could work together because they travel with a lot of equipment and they could hide the drugs it would be very easy for them. So you cannot imagine how many people are truly involved in the drug trafficking business. I remember, sportsmen, congressmen, policemen, militaries. It was like everywhere, anybody could be part of the business.
Yeah, well, at one point it was so profitable and so big that actually once you mentioned, for example, the airport in Opaloka, or is it that called? It's called like that. I never heard of it before. And when I tried to Google it, it said on its Wikipedia page that it's like a 15,000 people population, but it was like the murder capital of the States, the entire United States, for many, many years.
Imagine. Yeah. That's what's prohibition, and the combination of prohibition and drug trafficking makes violence. That's what it brings to the society.
Yeah. And what is it? I tried to Google it, but not many Google results came up, which was very surprising to me, considering we're talking about someone like Pablo Escobar. But you've been talking about is it? I'm hoping I'm not butchering it. Banana root? Is it
banana root?
Banana. But there was some canal and smuggling with bananas, and they call it like the translation is
perhaps the translated, or perhaps is the funny because they use a boat for that, and fish, and this because of the smell of the fish is very difficult to feel the smell of the cocaine.
Yeah.
So the drug dealers, like my father, they were very, very creative in terms of how to smuggling drugs to the United States. They even my father invented a formula to put just inside of the jeans some cocaine, liquid cocaine.
Yeah,
and they needed to wash the jeans.
The jeans is a material.
This fabric.
In fabric, yeah.
This fabric. So when they arrived to the United States, they put it into some kind of bathtubs or something, and they just take out the cocaine out of the jeans. And if you look at the garment, it's like perfect, and it doesn't smell. So that's my father invention. And of course, 3 years after, the authorities saw that, and they start washing jeans and extracting the cocaine. But my father continued sending the same brand and same jeans, but now without cocaine.
Yeah.
So the DEA was disappointed because they saw the boxes and they checked every one of them, and no even one jean with cocaine. So they threw the boxes to the garbage, and the boxes were the ones who contained the cocaine.
Yeah.
So that's the way that my father used and manipulated the DEA agents to smuggle the drugs to the United States. He used the jeans until they found out, and then he used the boxes, which they throw away to the garbage.
And then we're circling back to you, because you know this because he was bragging about it to you.
Yes, of course. I stayed many nights with him, just doing nothing, just hiding. And what do you do if you are running away and hiding? You just have several conversations with your son. It was also very boring. We used to even read the dictionary because we run out of books. It's like, we read everything. Okay, what's left? The dictionary. So you take one dictionary, I'll take another one. Let's read and find very awkward kind of words that we don't know about it. So we used to do that, and we have several conversations. I even stay with him in his own jail for 20 days, sleeping there. So that's exactly the time where I heard many, many stories from his side.
Yeah, yeah. And how old were you when he was bragging about it? When you started, hiding all the time? Because
since I was 7.
You were 7 years old, yeah. Because you said that considering his entire life, he only had like small amount of time that he felt like blissful happiness.
4 years.
4 years. 4 years.
Only 10%.
And everything else was hiding.
Yeah, running away, and couldn't spend the money, living like the poorest, being portrayed as the richest.
Yeah, yeah. But on the other hand, because I would like to focus on you, in those early days, your childhood was completely different than a normal childhood. And
yes.
For you, it was normal at the time. Maybe not normal, but there was nothing else, nothing to compare it with.
Yeah, it's like, it was my world. I just, suddenly I was there and surrounded by bodyguards, luxury and money and security, and always an excuse not don't go there because blah, blah, blah. So it was my world. I didn't knew another kind of world. And so I couldn't compare much. But, of course, very soon, when I started to go to my school and stuff like that, I saw that some of my, I don't know the word in English, my mates, they were like, just like stepping away. And even if we got along very well, I realized that their fathers, their parents, prohibit to, socialize with me somehow.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of situation and prejudice that I started feeling in the early days.
And how did your typical day as a child look like? Because in your chapter, Father or Papa or whatever, Narco, you're saying about, painting the picture of how popular in the Naples place was he, that every day you would see like hundreds of cars parked in front, and who were your friends at the time, and how did you spend your days as a child? We're talking about 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah,
child.
My friends, they were all bandits, or sicarios or killers.
Yeah,
because they were the only men next to me. There was no kids, so I was a kid, in an adult's world, and I just adapted. We became friends. We make jokes. They were of course very violent, even to make jokes. So that was a different kind of. So I was like forced to grow very fast.
Yes.
If I didn't adapt that way, I could have been not killed, but you have to be show yourself like a brave man in front of many of them.
Yeah, but also in that part of the book, you're saying about how seductive and appealing this whole thing was in the early days, because when you would see these hundreds of cars in front of the villa in Naples, you would see many common people over there coming over, not just sicarios,
many
bandits,
people that we didn't even knew ever. It was like the parties there were like 2,000 people, and I can tell that we knew 100 of them, not the rest. So it was like living la vida loca, but it wasn't like a good life, because suddenly anything could happen. Somebody could die, or the police could arrive and spoil all the parties. So we were living on a constant fear. That's you cannot enjoy your life if you're living like that.
Yeah. But and also around that time in 1981, certain famous pictures were made, in front of the White House in Washington, and you went with your father in the tour of the FBI, and which paints a picture of the times, because he was not known in the States at the time, and he could travel freely. And what do you think was the motives behind traveling to the White House and going to the FBI headquarters.
Well, I think that like everybody who's been allowed to go to the U.S., perhaps it's a picture that it's like going to Paris and not taking a photo next to the tower. But in my father's case, among all those things, I think that he wanted to push things to the limit, in terms of, entering to the FBI building with a fake passport. That's like too much. Yeah. But he wanted to try to test them. How will be the reaction from their side? And there wasn't any, because as I told you at the beginning, they weren't prepared for that.
Yeah,
it was just like too new, and the law wasn't prepared to, attack or pursue the drug dealers like they do today.
Yeah, and and while reading the book later on, I've read a couple of passages regarding that particular thing, and as the book progresses, those things become more and more common thing. But in the beginning, while you were still very, very young, one thing that crossed my mind, I've been thinking about it while reading it, was, how much violence have you actually seen with your eyes in the early childhood? Because the first memory that you're talking about, I don't know if you have witnessed it, if you have witnessed any murders or something like that, was when in Naples, when he figured out that, I don't know, $2 million or something like that were missing from the estate. And then he figured out that some security guy from the Naples stole it, and then he killed him in the pool in front of all of the staff that were employees in the estate. So have you been present at that point, or
no? But I heard, many of my friends, many of my bandits, criminal friends, they were there. And they told me about the story. That was like the kind of lesson that my father wants to teach to his own people. And they remembered my father saying when he was doing that, he was saying, this is what happens when somebody steals money from me. So there was like a clear message to everyone that, okay, nobody messes with the patron's money. So I never witnessed that kind of violence. But of course, many of my bodyguards, like we were just, crossing the streets in Medellin, and we receive attacks, gunshots, and many people firing at us, and my bodyguards reacting. So that kind of situations, I lived many, because we were living like in Vietnam, and it was like literally, even in the last days of my father, we got the protection from the government. And I remember that building, and I just remember also at the same time the movies that I used to see about Vietnam, the movies that really, I remember the barricades they made, and we had exactly the same ones. I remember the alarms, like the Second World War, the alarms, we have the same sound in our building in case of any attack. And I can tell you that during 3 months, every single day of our life, the building received shots from people from outside. Yeah. They used to distract the neighbors with fireworks, that kind of stuff. And when they were just throwing the fireworks, they were shooting at us in our building. Yeah. So it was like something very, very scary, man, because you feel death like already. And the paradox is that the people who were actually protecting us, they were also the enemy, and they were disappearing people inside of our own apartment, It's like every day you go to sleep, and the next day there's someone missing.
Yeah. And you have no idea what happened to that person.
And we never found the body.
Yeah.
And that happened with many of our relatives and friends.
Yeah, which brings us to...
with the protection of the government.
Yeah, which brings us to two very important questions. One is, how did you feel when those things happened at the time? And of course, how do you feel about those things, and how did you feel about those things once as you were grown up and mature person writing the stories and addressing those experiences again later on in life? Do you how did those memories evolved?
Well, I think that it's like living again the experience of remembering what happened in the past, and having and at least feeling more mature to analyze those things. It was a very complex thing to write about, because you have a mix of your feelings, you have a mix of your memories, and then you go to dig in some files and ask some friends and even some enemies about this. So it was very, very hard to find the proper words to describe the situation without putting a lot of personal things inside the book, because I was, trying to be as neutral as possible, even if I was the son. Yeah, I can't. But you can do the effort of, not being blinded by the love that you feel for your father. I try to leave that on a separate box so I can write this book.
Yeah. Another thing, then we're going to go back to those experiences because I think it's very important. Another thing is, while writing the book, how difficult was it? How safe was it?
Totally unsafe. I risked my life. I received threats not to tell anyone what happened with our money, for example, and so I faced all my father's enemies just writing this book. And of course, the situation when I started, this book was published in the year 2014, approximately, in Colombia. But I must say that during those days, like 95% of my father's enemies were already dead or in prison or extradited to the U.S., or they were like losing their power. So it doesn't mean that I feel less, but okay, I felt like there was a opportunity also to tell this story. And for me also was very important because of the prejudice against us. It's like, there's a chapter specifically called "Where's the Money?"
Yeah,
because that's a question that I've been, I never asked where do you have your money. I will never dare to ask you that, but people don't care and ask me that. So I wrote a specific chapter to explain that. But actually, I was, we all receive threats in our family not to tell where the money went. How the money disappeared. It was everything that every war has money in the middle, and you have to give away everything. So that's what we did just to save our own lives, but we were forced to say that nothing about it. So it was like, yes, we still have the money, and no, we don't have the money.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to live a life where everybody sees you as one of the richest kid in the world, and you're driving a Honda and a very small car, and you don't own your own apartment or you don't have a private jet, but a lot of people thinks that you do. So it was for me also. I feel the need to explain this to society. Hey, don't ask me anymore about where's the money, because if you want to know, just read the book and you will see where's the money. And even the policemen in Colombia, when I published the book, they were against this and against me, saying that I took all the money. And so I went and I spoke with the ambassador in Argentina, the Colombian ambassador. And I said, the police is asking about the money, and I'm willing to say it publicly if they are willing to join me, and I will go to the generals' houses to show where is our work of art and all our stuff. I will gladly show this to the world. And he said, please don't do it. And then the police stopped asking.
Yeah, but two things about that particular chapter which struck me really, really in a big way. One was, reading this book after, 100 pages, for example, you get so overwhelmed by the number of killings, by the number of kidnappings, by the number of car bomb plantings, by the number of it's just like a record of day by day by day violence, just so much violence. If you become overwhelmed, after 100 pages, you just have to take a pause and be like, okay, let's just listen to some music or something.
When I finished, you know how many pages that I wrote? 900.
Wow.
And the publisher said, no, it's too much. You cannot print a book so big. And I said, I took my job very seriously. You told me and you paid me to tell the full story.
Yeah.
And here you have it. It's 900 pages.
Yeah.
So they asked me to even cut, and more violence. So you didn't read all the violence.
Yeah, but, just having the record of violence like that, just one after another. And all of a sudden, in the middle of that violence, you have this, where's the money, in what chapter, which I would like you to paint this picture, because I found it fascinating, because on the one hand, your mother is such a strong character. The things that she pulled in order to save her life and life of her children was amazing.
Absolutely.
Completely insane. And on the other side, this bitter feeling of facing your father's family with the
Cali meeting.
Yeah, in the Cali meeting.
Yeah.
So I would like you, to address those two things, because on the other side you have so much violence.
Yeah.
But then you find out that that there's another thing coming.
Yeah. Well, I was invited to a meeting where they already announced me that I would be killed. So as you can imagine, I wasn't so happy for the invitation.
How old were you?
I was 16.
Yeah.
But I was, at the beginning, I just said, no, I won't go, because, your survival.
Let's just say, this all is happening
after my father's death.
Yeah, he's dead, and now father enemies, all of the other cartels.
Yeah, they knocked into our door and said, we want to recover the money that we spent killing your father.
Yeah.
So we want all of your assets for us. You have like 10 days to provide a list of everything you owned, and we will look and we will see what we want for us and all of our friends.
Yes.
So that's how everything started. And my mom was the lady who was behind, giving them all of the assets that we owned. But in the middle of that, they called me for a meeting, and they told me that they were going to kill me in their meeting. So I said, okay, I won't go. It's like, who's going to just to die? Because,
just say, why did they want to kill you? Because you were the only son.
Yeah, see, in Colombia, every male is like is the one who inherits whatever problems that his father had. If he also inherits his debts and everything. So it's like, okay, I didn't do anything like my father, but I have all the responsibility, and I have to give answers to everyone about this. So that was the reason that I was called. And also because I tried a whole country, not publicly, but the recordings were published, and they were worried about me, and they were right to be worried, because, I was thinking about the possibility of being like my father, and that could have been very, very dangerous for them. So it was a natural thing that they would like to kill me, and they have all the power, and nobody will say anything. There won't be any protest against my assassination. Won't happen, nothing like that. So I feeling in a very weak position. But suddenly, this invitation came because I went to a jail to visit some of the Norte del Valle, the cartel of the Norte del Valle is nearby Cali. And they were actually the guys who told me that I needed to go to the meeting. So I say, no, thank you. And it's like suddenly someone from the jail that I never knew approached to me and said, you have to go to the meeting. And I said to this guy, yes, but, they want me dead, and I won't collaborate with my own death. Come on, it's like, who can ask you that? And he said to me something that I will never forget. He said, "You don't understand what's going on." And I said to him, "Yes, I do understand. They want me dead." "No, no, you don't understand. You are already dead," he said to me. And that makes a lot of sense regarding the situation. And he said to me, "You are already dead, but the only way out for you is being on time, exactly in the meeting where they are going to kill you. That's the only way out. Go." So I say, "Okay, will you arrange the meeting for me?" And I went there. So I never expected to get out of that meeting alive, of course.
Yeah, but how did you go there?
I went with my mother. And of course, I was expecting to see the Cali cartel bosses, exclusively. But I found out there was my grandmother and some of my aunts and even one of my cousins there, like partying with them, with the cartel. And I said, they
from
were
the father's side?
Yeah, from my father's side. They were supposed to be our enemies, and so what are you doing here? Like opening the fridge and just taking food, like if you were parents or something like that. It's like, what's going on here? So this is how I discovered that my father was betrayed by his own family, his own mother, and she didn't even care, she didn't feel uncomfortable by doing that in front of his own grandson. And even she dared to ask the Cali cartel members, "Before you kill him, I want all of his assets for me." So that is not the kind lady that you can see on Narcos show. Yeah. I wish to have that version of my grandmother.
Yeah. Just approach, pull up this microphone. And so now circling back to this, violence that you have or have not experienced, but at certain point, when you were 7 years old, we're now jumping ahead a bit, there's a certain part of the one part of the book which also really, struck me, was you woke up one night, as a 7-year-old child with the gun against your stomach.
Yeah. Well, that was a kind of life that unfortunately we were used to live, because the police. Oh, thank you, man. The police was always like trying to catch my father. My father was always a step ahead of them, so we were all like left in the properties, and then the police arrive and they treat you as a bandit. They don't treat you as a kid. They don't see you as a kid. And I was a 7-year-old kid, so you can easily distinguish, an adult from a minor of age. But and I don't want to justify the police actions, of course, but I believe that they were totally desperate to find any kind of, to present to the society some kind of results against my father, some kind of victories. But they couldn't. My father was clever and was even faster than them. So it was like my father was playing with them all the time. And they were, that would make them very, very mad at him. And of course, they take it against us because they couldn't take it against him.
Mm. Yeah, but that moment, imagine being 7-year-old and waking up with a gun pointed at you against your stomach.
Yeah, I remember there was a case in the United States that there was a huge scandal, and it happened perhaps during the year 1994, 95, approximately, because I remember watching the whole news, the newspapers, all with a big picture of the SWAT team from the U.S. going into a home, and with guns against just a little kid, like a 4-year-old kid. Because of immigration issues or something like that. So it became very famous, and it's a huge scandal. How come you could treat a kid like that? And my mother was also, oh, yeah, well, what happened to this kid? And I said to her, that picture? We don't have pictures of that, but that happened to me 100 times. And there wasn't a scandal about it. Yeah. And she said, she's like, there was a time when she just didn't have anything to say about it because she realized that something like that had happened to me like 100 times, not one time.
Yeah, how much?
Because they were saying, "No, the little kid is gonna be, traumatized for the rest of his life because of." And here I am.
Yeah, yeah. And another example, before I ask you the question, is also there's a part. It was in where was it? I forgot. When there was was it a car bomb or some bomb was planted? Yes, and you were sleeping.
Yeah, the Cali cartel.
Yeah, and bomb exploded. And what happened?
The first car bomb explosion in Colombia's history.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, and look what the press does. My father's been remembered like the first.
Just tell what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, but like my father has been remembered like the first Colombian terrorist.
Yeah.
But nobody tells that the first victims of terrorism in Colombia were his family. And I'm not trying to say this to justify his action, because I was actually against every attack he committed as a terrorist. And I asked him many times to stop that. But, it happens that Cali cartel and Medellin cartel had a fight between them. It's a long story, but long story short, they got into a fight because some of my father's associates gave like the secret cocaine routes to the other cartel as a gift. And my father was willing to kill this guy by doing that, because he did that. So the first reaction from the Cali cartel, they got I heard the call between my father and the Cali cartel. Okay, we're going to kill each other, but not our families. We're not going to. And the first thing they did was to put a car bomb, 700 kilos of dynamite in our home. And even if my father had all the addresses of all the relatives, he never shot at them, and it would be very easy for him to do that, because he respected the thing, even if his family was attacked. But after the attack, my father ordered like the explosion of more than 200 bombs around Colombia. And I was trying to say, stop this, man. You are just killing civilians and doing harm to anyone. And he said to me, you forgot that the first terrorist attack was against you, your little sister, and your mother, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, yes, but that doesn't give me the right to put bombs everywhere. I had this kind of discussions with my father, because I never believed in that violence is a way to find solutions. It's a way to have your hands stained of blood.
What happened from your perspective? Well, you were 7 years old, right?
I was 11.
11 years old.
When
sorry,
that happened,
was later
yeah.
on, yes.
It was in the year 1988, January 13. Well, we never heard a bomb in Colombia until that day. We were used to see on the news that some guerrillas throw a Molotov kind of bomb to a bank during the middle of the night. Nobody dies, just a little fire, and that was it. That was the kind of violence that we were used to see in Colombia. But when that started, it was the narco-terrorist era started that day, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a miracle that I'm still here. Nothing happened to me. I have no scars to show you, and I don't know how could we survive.
But you were sleeping.
I was sleeping, yes, of course, and with next to my mom. I almost died because the ceiling fell and almost crashed into the bed with me, and I couldn't breathe. My mother saved me, so it was a very difficult situation. And I remember that that was perhaps I don't know if my first or not, trauma, but I couldn't sleep for the next 6 months without the lights on.
Yeah,
I couldn't find a way to. I felt scared about darkness after that.
Yes, and this is exactly the point that I wanted to, address. Was, imagine being, waking up to a gun against your stomach at 7. Facing that kind of situation many times, then being waken up by the bomb explosion and ceiling falling on top of you, struggling to breathe against the dust. and at 11 years old, and that has to create some trauma. That has to create some PTSD. That has to create something. I'm just wondering. You seem so normal.
Yeah. I see myself like the same, and that worries me.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw so many soldiers that go to the war and come back, if they come back alive, if they have the luck to come back alive, and they get so many traumas because of the violence, because of the blood they saw, the kind of situations they witnessed. And I am not a soldier, but I lived like the same kind of experiences, and I don't know how I am dealing with them. But I think that writing a book or 2 or 3 books and making documentaries, open your heart and your story, that's a way of healing too, I believe. Yeah. Because I think that I will be another kind of guy if I will choose to be in silence, absolute silence. That will be, and I said this to my father's victims, we remain in silence for many years because we have to show respect to our father's victims. But in some other way, we have to speak and we have to tell them the truth, because this is also a way to repair the victims. You cannot repair a victim if you don't allow them to see what really happened with their relatives or whatever happened. So it was also a way to, let's say, rebuild ourselves and to recognize my father's sins and also to analyze our own life. And I think that it is a great psychologist. It's like having your own time and a full year to tell about your deepest thoughts and difficult to accept kind of truths, and to write them in a single page or in several of them. That really helps to heal somehow. Yeah. And also, I may say that the reconciliation process is truly a healing process, because what is forgiveness? It's forgiveness is not about forgetting things. It's about releasing the guy who committed the crime against you. If you don't forgive this guy, you will be filled of fear, pain, and many negative emotions that will damage you, and also revenge will appear, hate, and many, many other negative. So when I spoke with my father's victims, and we have a conversation about forgiveness, reconciliation, what happened to their lives, and we talk after that. How do we feel after this kind of very, very hard to have conversations? And we all feel better, we all feel alive and like, okay, you had a backpack full of stones and now you leave it there, and now you can continue your life without denying the past that you suffer, but at least a more light way to continue walking.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, all of those things. But before that, I would like to address a couple of more things also during the life with your father, which I think are very important to address. One is, the political rise of your father. We all saw, the Narcos series. We all, read and heard about things here and there throughout the popular culture. But things that you were writing about were very interesting to me. For example, and this is, I think there are certain parts that we need to explain historically before diving into these particular things. But the places that he visited while, on the rise in his so-called political career, and the way he gave speeches in those areas. So he went to very poor neighborhoods, and he gave speeches, and I'll quote you. You said his speeches were nationalistic, populistic, with the simple language addressed to the lowest of the low, to the poorest, to the poorest ones. And it's something that we are all kind of familiar with. You know, when you see, you know, criminals trying to be politicians, and, you know, when you hear the language of those politicians / criminals, they always have this nationalistic narrative, populistic narrative, which is always addressing, you know, the poorest of the poor, trying to win them over in a cheap way, you know, to gain their political and goals, and therefore acquire power. And how those things looked from your perspective. Can you tell us? Can you paint a picture and tell us a story about it?
Yeah, well, for me, you know, there was like two kind of politicians. The ones who wants to get into politics because they need money to steal from. But that wasn't the case of my father, because he already had all the money in the world.
Yeah.
So he didn't enter into politics because he wanted money. I think that he wanted to enter into politics because he felt that he would have more tools to help the poor until as being a civilian compared to a civilian. So that's why I think he wanted to be part of the political party or whatever. But then I think that he was for sure one of his biggest mistakes. He wanted to be part of the truly organized crime, and that is politics. My father's kind of life was a non-well-organized crime. That's it. But politics is truly organized crime.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And they didn't allow him to be part of that. So even today in Colombia, very recently, in our Congress, we didn't have enough quorum to vote a law, because more than half of our congressmen today, and very, very recently, were in jail because of the drug trafficking business. So it's like, Pablo Escobar was a drug dealer and a politician. Come on, it's like it's all over the place. Now take a look today and how we are in Colombia, at least, where I can speak. So it's like for him, the perspective was, I think he was, even if he was a criminal, he was trying to be an honest politician. And that's another contradiction of my father's life. It's full of contradictions. Whatever you look at, you will find several contradictions. How come he could be a good father and at the same time a terrorist? But, you know, he was having those kind of two lives or two personalities. I don't know. But I saw the politician, you know, receiving the many people thanked him for his help to the poorest, and because he really cared. He was a poor man. He never forgot where he was coming from.
Yeah.
And he wanted to use politics in favor of the people, not in his own favor. That it is the most common thing that we see today.
Yeah, but at the same time, also one of his motives was, you know, to fight against the possibility of extradition law. Yeah,
that was another. But he was bribing already a lot of politicians to stop that. Actually, he changed our constitution in the year 1991, and they erased the. Because my father paid for that, and the Cali cartel and all the drug dealers pay for that. And now extradition is already, functioning.
Yeah.
But it is very strange, because today, most of the drug dealers, they beg and they are willing to be extradited. And back in those days, they were willing to be dead instead of being on a jail in the United States. Because, unfortunately, today's justice is like it doesn't matter how much people you killed. It's just a matter of, okay, how much money do you have, and let's make an arrangement.
Yeah.
So today's drug dealers, they are just going out free of, out of jail in 6 months, and they all prefer to be extradited to the United States, because the time in prison is just a couple of months, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it is a very weird and wrong message to society, because it's like they are saying crime does pay. You just need to come here and make an arrangement with us.
Yeah, well, but also that was the time when violence escalated. Escalated because he started, ordering assassination of his political adversaries.
Yeah.
and that's when the famous assassination of Lara
Bonilla, yes, the Minister of Justice.
The Minister of Justice happened, and I think it's very important to. I don't know how people are familiar with. It's been talk about it widely and all over the world, but I think we need to give a context of M19 at the same time, because they were a big part of this whole thing, and then escaping to Panama and your life over there, because I would like to know your perspective, the way that kind of life in hiding, traveling, meeting with those, paramilitary, military generals, and, living the way, what was life like for you from your perspective during that time?
Well, sorry for my French, but it was shit, man. It was like nothing to enjoy. It's like I remember that I wasn't happy at all. It's like I never liked what I saw, never liked what I was experiencing. I didn't even like the place we went. We stayed in Panama with the protection of General Noriega, and also we went to Nicaragua with the protection of the local government over there. But we were hiding, we were on the run, surrounded by guns and people protecting us from. We didn't even know who was our enemy. So I remember that I was crying every single day of my life. That part of my journey.
Yes, but why am I mentioning it? And it's always hard to find the balance in between common stories that everybody know, because it's been told so many times. So I don't want to just, recycle the same old stories that everybody know. But also, it's important to be said. And this part of the story is very important because it was during those times. It was when your mother was pregnant with your sister, and
Manuela, yes,
and you gave your sister name.
I'm guilty for that.
And your mother gave birth to your sister during those
in Panama.
In Panama,
Exactly.
yeah. And then you were forced to separate from your father
and from my mother too.
And from your mother too.
Yeah.
And
they sent us the two kids to Colombia.
But first she was separated from her daughter, who was like a few weeks old.
Yeah.
And she hasn't seen her for months.
Yeah, because my father said if we need to run into the jungle, we cannot do it with a baby.
Yeah, so that's why I'm interested in this story. I wanted to get your perspective of what happened. And how did it felt?
Well, I felt very disappointed and absolutely abandoned, by my
just
two
give the
fathers.
Circumstances what happened then, at the time.
Well, my father killed the Minister of Justice. We went to exile into Panama with the protection from General Noriega. And once my father discovered that General Noriega was also working for the CIA, and he didn't trust him much, so he moved to Nicaragua. And well, my father told my mother, we have a baby and we cannot just keep running away with a baby. We need to send our daughter to Colombia to perhaps your mother, my grandmother, Leonor, could take care of her. And because I was crying every single day, he said, okay, perhaps they should go together. But they never told me that my mother wasn't going to be part of our trip. She joined us until Panama. We went again back to Panama, and we were about to take the flight to Medellin. But my mother stepped away from the plane. And I was alone with my little sister and a bodyguard, who was the only guy who was trying to get into Medellin with us. So that's how we arrived to Colombia. Of course, I cried all the trip. It's a very short trip, 45 minutes from Panama to Medellin. But I remember I cried all the journey because, I was expecting to have my mother with me. And actually my mother, couldn't stand this for much longer. And not the same day, but some days after, she took the decision of going to Medellin to see us and to stay with us. Because she couldn't, stand something like that.
Yeah, and being separated in such way during those, this is the recurrent theme within your story. Just again, having gun pointed at you so many times. Being, surviving the bomb, the attempt of assassination via bomb. Being hiding in jungles, being separated from your family, from your mom, hiding all the time, basically not having childhood at all, growing up with killers, with, bodyguards, as you stated in the book, playing football with them, chasing the ball with them, playing with toys with them, and then in this whole situation, this juxtaposition of things, having like your father killed the Ministry of Justice, and so
a presidential candidate and many other, and judges and policemen and militaries and everyone who could step in the middle.
And then and this is the human thing, and but the thing that hurt me the most reading the story, because after so many killings, you kind of get habituated to reading about it. Unfortunately.
And that's what happened to our society. We got it's like this is our world, this is our reality, and nobody protests against violence, and everybody stays shut and nobody say anything. But this is changing in Colombia today. Today people don't agree, living on fear. We want peace as Colombians. And now we go out and protest, and we take white flags to say we want and we need peace. But in those times, nobody dared to do that.
Yeah. And in all of those, during all of this chaos, all of this violence, the thing that struck me, the thing that hurt me the most, my first emotional response during those times was when you were escaping. So you had to escape in a hurry, and you couldn't even pick up your favorite toys.
Yeah, I left all my toys, everything.
And then I felt sorry for the boy,
Yeah, so we are in love with we have a favorite toy as a kid, we all have. But all my favorite toys, I have to leave them away because it's just not even my clothes, it's like just now, let's go now. Whatever you have, you just go, leave everything behind.
And as a father, picturing that scenario, kind of, it's one of those rare moments in your story where me as a regular citizen can connect, can identify, because all of those other things, they're so insanely violent, and
it looks like fiction.
It looks like fiction,
Yeah,
just
it
something,
is worse than fiction, or more dangerous than fiction,
because it's reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is why this part of the story is very important for me, for you to tell it. From your perspective, the way you felt, the way this horrible thing looks like, how this horrible thing looks like in reality. Because it's one thing to paint the picture of it.
Well, I think that those kind of experience shape, the kind of guy that I am today. I don't want to live, not even by far, the same experiences. That's why I became an architect, an industrial designer, and someone else, a writer, a speaker, whatever. Yeah. I prefer to clean bathrooms instead of, being a drug dealer. And I could be a drug dealer every day of my life. But I will never choose that path because I know the consequences already. And this is also helping me to help others, to inspire them to find better ways to succeed in life. Even, every single day of my life. Yesterday I was just chatting with some of my fans in Instagram, and some guy from the US, hey, I'm tired of poverty, he said to me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about business, he said to me. And I said, man, I know where he was going. And I said, hey, man, I took a very, very different direction and decisions in my life. I'm fully dedicated to peace. Thank you very much. I just want to remind you that, we all start from scratch. And it was our case because all the money we owned that we thought we owned, it was my father's money, of course. It was gone, and we start again. So if you are in poverty right now, I'm sorry, but just keep looking for some legal options for you to overcome your situation. And he was saying, that is very hard, blah blah blah. But I said to him, man, this is the only way out. If you truly want to get out of poverty, your talent for better purposes, not for criminal purposes.
Yeah, and
because you were gonna end up like my father.
Exactly.
Or even worse.
But during those times, for example, in Nicaragua, while you were exploring, telling the story of your hiding in Nicaragua, one of the things that you have mentioned is, that you were crying every day in Nicaragua and begging your father to leave the place. You were at 7 years old. You were prepared to go back and die.
I felt already dead. There was like no
at
hope.
7 years old.
There was no hope and the energy of the places. I don't know if you believe or not in energies, but I can tell you when death is nearby, you can feel it. It's very cold, very, very cold. It's like you could be summer, 40 degrees outside, and you will be freezing here.
Yeah. Do you carry that feeling still?
No.
No.
I don't care anymore.
Yeah. But you have felt it and carried it with you.
Many times in my life. I lost count.
Yeah. It's amazing what humans are capable of surviving and how...
Yeah, that's what I keep saying, man. My life, it's a miracle. I'm not a very religious man, and I don't know but if this story doesn't show you that miracles exist, I don't know which other.
Well, around that time, I think that it was during that time, your father ran into more troubles because there was also another film. What was the name of him? American Made or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because Beri Sil.
Beri Sil story, yes.
Beri Sil story. So Beri Sil took a famous photo of your father and working with
the Nicaraguan government and soldiers loading with drugs of a plane that he bought from the CIA.
Yeah. And Beri Sil took a photo. He was working for the DEA or CIA. He was
a collaborator of the DEA, and he was working for the CIA. He was working for the two agencies and working for my father, cartel, as a pilot who smuggled drugs to the United States. So he used to bring guns to Central America, and they took the drugs from Central America to the United States. You have to, just to give some context, the U.S. used to do this kind of business to sponsor the fights against the lefty groups in Central America. So to provide with guns and money, they cannot use the people's money to sponsor that, but they can use the drug trafficking business money for that. So my father was in the middle of the situation, and I cannot assure you this, but someone told me that my father was totally aware of the photos.
Really?
Yeah, and he didn't have any problem with that. He already faced the world and said, "Yes, I am a criminal, and this is who I am." So there's another theory. And I think that, if you look at the photos, they introduced to the world, and they show the pictures to the world, like, this is the evidence that Pablo Escobar was a drug dealer. And yes, it is. It could be. But it is also the evidence that the DEA, the CIA, the lefty and the right-wing groups were working together. That's also an evidence, And I don't care, I don't have anything to say more about this, but it's just deep thoughts about, okay, what's the meaning of the photos? The meaning is they want to spoil my father's life. He was already spoiled because he already killed a minister. You know, he was having lots of trouble. He had so much trouble with the law that he just stopped caring about that. He even called it his friends, and say, if you do something, tell it was that I gave the order. You just blame me. He didn't care, you know. So he was taking even responsibility for crimes he didn't commit it. Many of those, let's say, in Colombia, there was not only the assassination of the Minister of Justice and the presidential candidate Galan, but there were also some other magnicides called, and I saw that in the news they were saying Pablo Escobar was the guy behind this.
Yeah.
And he was next to me, saying, no, I didn't do it. So I said to him, okay, why don't you go out and say you didn't do it? And he explained to me, if I do such a thing, I will put all my family in danger, because I know who truly were the ones who gave the order to kill this guy. But if I deny this, I will start a war with a family that I don't have any problems with. And thanks to the media, people fear more Pablo Escobar, because they portrayed me as a more dangerous guy than I truly am. So he took the advantage of, you know, being shown in the press like he killed everyone, and he took that on his own favor to say, yes, I am so dangerous that I can kill anyone. So that it also gave more power to my father as a man. You know, the news that appear on the media portraying him like even a worse person.
Yes, and so I think it's also important to state that, you know, April of 19th of April movement, the M19 movement, the leaders of the movement and your father were very close, and he kind of saw opportunity in them to destroy all of the documents against him, you know, to
all the files in Palace of Justice in Bogota.
Yes, so he decided to finance their fight.
They all deny this. I must say it, because it's not to respect the truth, but at least to respect what they say about this. My father told me that he truly collaborated with this. I have no issues with him. And also I have some photos with Simon Bolivar's sword, that it was the first object that the M19 group stole to declare themselves like rebels, you know, like revolutionaries. So they gave this sword to my father as a gift, and he gave it to me. So I took pictures. I had like 30 motorcycles waiting for me and a sword. Come on, I will use the motorcycles, not the sword. But I took a couple of pictures and I forgot about the sword until my father called me again. Hey, you have to give me back the sword that I gave you. And I said, no, you gave it to me. I won't return it because you already gave it to me. And no, I'm serious, man. You have to give it back to me. And I just forgot what I left the sword. It was totally a disrespect for a very unique and historical object. But I was a kid, you know, I was a teenager. I didn't care about all of those things. And you know, even the M19, even if they denied that my father didn't own the sword or didn't have it, they even published classified ads in the public media to say, hey, please give us back the sword. And my father at the same time was calling, and suddenly there was a ceremony because they make peace. They became rebels, and they make, after the M19 took control of the Palace of Justice, it's like they make peace with the government, and they became a political party now.
Yeah.
But they asked them, okay, you have to give back the sword. And there was a ceremony where they were giving it back, but it used to be also my sword because my father gave it to me. So even if they deny that they didn't have any relation with my father, okay, what was the sword doing in my hands? You know, it's like, how come we got into this? So I just received the gift, and that's it. That's the story, and that's the evidence. And they said, no, the photo is not the same sword, but the reality is that nobody remembers how the Bolivar sword looked. And I forgot about where I left the object. So I asked all of my bodyguards, 15 of them, hey, go everywhere. And if you find anything bigger than a knife, bring it to me. And then when they arrive, they arrive like with machetes and like 10 different types of swords. So I took a picture of everyone and I sent everything to my father because I didn't even remember which one was it.
Insane.
So even today, I don't know if the real sword is there or not.
Yeah, these are exactly those, as I mentioned before, juxtapositions of, you know, having insane reality, and within these insane realities have these small pockets of irony, of, I don't know, comic, even tragic comical moments.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what I wrote a comic book also recently, because it's about my life. It's not about my father's life, because in my 2 books, this is on my first one, I spoke only about my father, not about me. Yeah, I described some of my situations, but it is about him, what he did exactly. So I think, in my second book, it's called Pablo Escobar Infraganti, I went to see one of my father's worst enemies. I risked my life again for another book. And I had a conversation with Oti Patiño, one of the members of the N19, and now he's part of the actual government in Colombia. And of course, he denies all of that. And I respect, you know, his sayings, and I publish his sayings, and I publish mine. You know, I'm in a very respectful way. This is your version of your story. This is my version of the story. People and the reader will, you know, judge ourselves who's telling the truth.
Yeah, but also, you know, so this angle of yours is like, I think I've seen one of your interviews where you said, because your childhood and, you know, your upbringing and your life is very unique, but at the same time, other leaders of other cartels also had their own children.
Yeah.
And I think that in one interview you mentioned that you got in touch with
many of them, the sons of we became friends. We should be enemies according to the laws of the mafia, the laws of the hate. But because we all believe and learn about reconciliation and forgiveness, I have many of their WhatsApp numbers here. You know, the cartel sons, the Cali cartel sons. I have 2 numbers from them, and every Christmas, every year, they send me good messages. I prefer that instead of threats, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And even we one of them, Miguel Rodriguez, actually he's been called exactly like his father. I invited him to participate in some public events in Mexico because I thought it was, what could be more shocking and important and inspiring that, you know, me showing you the pictures of the bomb, the car bomb, and after that, and showing you how much we suffer, blah, blah, blah. And then I will ask Miguel to come out to the stage and give me a hug, and we can continue our story together,
yes,
telling who were our fathers, but instead of choosing revenge, instead of choosing violence, we choose to stay together and say, okay, this is where this cycle of violence stops. We step out and it finishes here. And we are truly committed with that. And that happened with many of the sons of, you know, and I feel that there are a lot of sons of that are willing to talk with me about all of this stuff, because I think we have a lot to share and to learn from each one of us.
And also, there is this famous picture, and there's a huge story behind it. This one, I want
with
you
the
to...
Galan brothers and the Rodrigo Lara, that's minister son, Rodrigo Lara is called exactly the same as the minister.
Yeah.
All of the pictures, it was considered a historical picture in Colombia, because it was the first time that someone speaks about reconciliation and forgiveness. What's that? We kill each other here. We don't have conversations. We solve things with guns. No conversation. And so it was the first time that somebody like me approached to them and say, "I'm sorry, man. I don't feel proud of what my father did to you." And we had our meeting during the shooting of a documentary called Sins of My Father. And it was a very, very unique moment for me. You know, the first time that I look into the eyes of my father's victims, it was one of the most painful moments. You know, I feel more fear going to that meeting, even if you compare it to the Cali cartel meeting. Because, you know, at least, you know, the others will be like the same kind of families. But these families is like, they are not saints, but they're good people, man. And so they don't deserve the violence they received. And I never felt proud of that. The paradox of this picture is that every single guy in the picture follow his father's footsteps, but except me.
They all became politicians.
They all became politicians. But I'm totally aware that I don't have, I don't think it's the right or not, but I have to choose well, and that is not following my father's.
But getting in touch
example
with them, you know, for the first time. How was
I
that?
wrote a letter. I wrote a letter for them. I threw the draft many times, because how can you approach to a victim? How can you say hello? How are you? You're just offending them just by saying hi. You know, you don't know how to start. They are living a truly authentic pain. So how can you, hey, good evening? No, you cannot say that. You have to choose perfect words to start a conversation, and nobody prepares you for that. I was just there. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to start, but I need to be there. I just want to be there. And I can tell you that I had a pain in my stomach that I felt like a knife, just like if someone stabbed me. It was like something very, very unique. And that pain remained until the end of the meeting. When then the meeting stopped and everybody was like relaxed, and now we asked for a couple of whiskeys, and there was a good gesture from Juan Manuel Galan, that he showed me. He opened his wallet and he showed me the pictures of his sons. That's a way of showing you. In Colombia, you don't do that. Okay. Because you don't show your kids to anyone. And that was a way to say, I trust you so much that I want to introduce you to my family, and these are my kids. That was the time where I felt, okay, these guys truly believe that this is an authentic forgiveness and reconciliation process. So I felt very touched by that gesture of Juan Manuel Galan, because nobody dared to do such a thing. You know, I never published a picture of my son, never, because, you know, you never know. You know, having that experience, we all together, and they opening, you know, their wallets to show me their families and their sons. That was a unique moment, historical moment for me and also for our country.
And there was one particular sentence they told you that was very disarming and made all the difference in changing your own perspective of your own life. It's at the end of the book. What they told you?
Tell me, remember me. I remember exactly. But
so yeah, they told you.
I just want to see if the translation is well.
You are the victim too.
Yeah, that was something that I never expected to hear, and that I never portrayed myself also as a victim. And I answered to them, look, I never saw myself this way as a victim, and I will never dare to portray myself like that. But even if that's the case, if I am a victim, I will be always the last man standing in the line, because before me there's a lot of my father's victims. So if I'm one of them, I will be the last one. And I won't be claiming anything, you know. I think that the story is over, you know. Thank God it's over. And it's our responsibility. How can we continue with the knowledge that we have, thanks to this kind of suffering and war and damage and chaos and the perfect storm that you mentioned?
Yes, we're not going to go into the parts of the your father's story about, you know, cathedral, the more terrorist attacks, you know, the I don't know, the all of those very known things, like, you know, the bomb in commercial airplane where.
Yeah, those are, you know, it's countless, you know, it's
countless victims, yes,
Yeah,
and their families, and it's a wave of violence.
And you have to multiply, let's say, for the Avianca flight, the bomb. I met the guy who represents 85 families, and there were 107 people killed in that commercial air flight. And I don't see 107. I see at least triple the amount of people, because you have to think they have fathers, they have daughters, you know, at least a friend. So there's a lot of people involved in that. It's not that, okay, 100 people die. No, it's more people is suffering because of that. Yeah. So when I saw this guy for the first time in my life, I felt even more pain than when I visited the Galan brothers and the Rodrigo Lara Bonilla's son, because he was represented even the civilians, you know, also at the same time. And the great part of this is that we became friends after, you know, his father took the plane. His father was, how can I say this word in English? He worked for a car agency for 30 years. He was the CEO, and he was about to, not to resign, but he was okay, and he was going to receive a good payment, and he was going to retire. Mm-hmm. The day he took the plane, and he was next to the guy who was about to take control of the company. So this guy, Gonzalo Rojas, the son, it's obsessed, and I understand why, to seek for the truth of what happened with this terrorist attack, because there are several anecdotes and sayings, different hypotheses of what happened in that situation, and I'm just trying to collaborate with him as you know, as many ways as possible for him. But I felt so bad after I saw him, because he represents so many people, and it was very, very hard for me to look into this guy's eyes, because it was, you know, you could feel that behind him there was at least 300 people, not him alone. But I even collaborated with him with a great campaign, a very different type of campaign, because one of advertising agency, one of the most known advertising agencies of the world, offered him help to raise awareness about the people who was trying to buy things related to my father. So he asked me for the help of doing something, and the campaign, they created a whole website and a whole line of products, containing my father's image and name, and like glorifying him again. But even they go further than that, and they build and they design clothes for kids, even.
Wow. Yeah.
So they went even deeper. So it caused a tremendous scandal worldwide. And this guy called me, hey, I need your help. I want you to say publicly that you are against this, but the thing is that people will like to buy some of these products, even like baby bottles with my father's face. It was like too much. So every time everyone went to the web page to buy an item, and they just push the button to buy them. Instead of, okay, you're now going to your card, this is to place your credit card, a video of every single victim of the Avianca flight appear and say, what are you doing? This is the guy who caused me this harm, and they tell the story. So it's a way to raise awareness, and it was a great campaign because, okay, they call the attention of the people and the media by doing such a horrendous designs. But at the same time, they were creating consciousness inside people's mind, because every time they want to buy something, they will find a video of their victims.
Yeah, but how much effect do you think this whole campaign and the thing that you're doing are, getting traction?
1% compared to Netflix, who's glorifying my father everywhere, is having posters in every single main city of the world. I've seen posters of my father's life like, this is the great life. It's like, come on, it's an insult to my father's victims.
Yeah, and you've seen people...
Direct insult.
Yeah, and you've seen people tattooing your father, yeah.
Even in I saw one of my father's, the face, he tattooed in the cheek. Yes, come on, it's like too much for me.
Yeah. And when did you start reconciliation with the victims, and who was the first one you approached?
Well, the first ones were the Galan brothers and the Rodrigo Lara son.
Yeah.
Exactly them. They were and this is the whole process started. So far I've been, talking with 150 families already, not counting the Avianca flight. Direct victims, and I don't have a single case to tell you that, okay, this guy or this wife or this widow didn't want to talk with me.
They all wanted to talk to you.
They all want. And that's good. That's good, and that, brings me more hope to continue in this journey. Perhaps, I don't feel like in the beginning the responsibility to maintain myself, seeking for forgiveness is like my purpose in life. No, but it is, if I have the opportunity and if I have a victim in front of me, I will, I won't doubt, and I will ask for the forgiveness. And it happened in many, many events, like, in public events in Mexico, when I just opened the event for the Q&A session and I stay with the public. Many of them have raised their hands and say, I am one of your father's victims. And they tell publicly the story. And I don't wait, I do it there, because you don't have time to think about it twice.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Yeah, and how difficult it is for you to go through those meetings, and how difficult it is for those families of the victims?
Oh, man, it's just like... living the moment again, the pain comes again, but it's the only way to take it out of your soul. If it's not, it's going to stay and remain inside of you and will harm you in the ways you cannot imagine. It will make you feel sick. So that's why we keep doing it, because it's a way of healing. Forgiveness is about healing. It's not about forgetting things. It's about moving forward, but let the pain stay out of your soul, and so you can move forward in life. Because if not, you will always be looking to your past, and you cannot walk in that direction if you're looking always
over your shoulder.
Over your shoulder.
Yeah. After your father was killed in 92 or 94.
Sorry if I correct you. After my father committed suicide.
Committed suicide. Okay, yeah. Committed suicide. So
that's the U.S. version of the story. They killed him.
Yeah. So how did you find out this true story about the death of your father?
Well, as I was on the phone with him, and I knew that he was committing on purpose his biggest mistake, because he always teach me not to ever use a phone line. He told me everyone I wanted to find, I wanted to kill, and I wanted to kidnap, I found them because they used the phone. That's the biggest mistake a human being can make. And because they all call their mothers, their sisters, their loved ones, or someone. They will call someone. And the phone is death. That's what he teach me for the past 10 years. And he even never used a phone. No wonder why he was never catched by the authorities, because he never used phone. He used to use pigeons, or something very like in the tools from the war, not new technologies, not cellular phones, nothing. So the communications were very, very different.
Okay, and what were the reactions after the book was published, and stating so many different with so many contradictions,
Yeah, it's like me against journalism, because they said that there was another story. No, I'm sorry, guys, but you didn't investigate well, and you weren't there. You didn't hear my father, and so I think the reaction was the kind of reaction that I expected, a scandal because of the things that I reveal in the book. And also, even I received a threat from one of my father's family member. He called my lawyer and he said, I'm going to sue my nephew because he's saying lies about me. He's saying that I work for the DEA, that I betrayed my own brother, blah, blah, blah. So my lawyer answered to my uncle. He said, okay, you of course have the right to sue your nephew if you believe that he's lying. But just think about one thing. What if he can demonstrate that he's telling the truth? Yeah. So I'm still waiting for the sue.
Yes, you're still waiting for the lawsuit. Yeah. How do you continue your life? Which is, how do you become who you are? And your sister and your mother, because your mother had you when she was very young. So so there's a whole life in front of you, in front of three of you after your father's suicide. And you told the story about buying off your freedom, especially for you, because there was a decision that you were going to be assassinated as a single heir of your father. And you have managed to buy off your freedom, gave away your assets, the money, and, there were certain things that were left for you, like those condos, like apartment complex that he personally wrote a testament to leave it for you. So the cartel didn't want to touch that.
Yeah, but they seize, the government, they seize everything.
Then the government took everything. Yeah, but after all of those, what I want to say, after all of those things happened,
I only inherited air. That was the only thing left.
But you still had your name, Juan Pablo Escobar. Your sister was still Manuela, and you had to go through a process of, I want you to tell the story of how did you regain your freedom, because it wasn't only the problem within cartels.
No, that was just the start, It was just to, when you grow up as a very rich kid and suddenly you run out of money and you have to take a bus when you used to, have your own driver and Mercedes, Jaguar or Ferrari. Well, it is hard to adapt, but it's nice because you feel freedom, the freedom that the money couldn't buy for you.
But before your first bus ride, which happened in Buenos Aires, right? Before that, you had to go through a lot of processes. What was the first thing that you tried? What was the first thing you tried? You tried to leave the country, but you couldn't leave the country. You couldn't buy the ticket.
Yeah, nobody wanted to sell me any plane tickets because who I was, there wasn't any kind of prohibition to do such a thing. But prejudice didn't allow us to go out of the country, so we changed legally our names to have another story to tell. And when we approached to the same counters to buy the airplane tickets with a different identity, they just gave it to us.
Yeah. So you asked for help On how many
We
addresses?
asked for the United Nations, Red Cross, the Vatican, all the Colombian authorities, but nobody was just willing to help us at all.
And
They
who-
just receive us and just, that's it. It's like, okay, thank you for the meeting, and that's it.
Where did you live at the time?
In Bogota, surrounded by policemen and soldiers
Yes, and
in an apartment.
yes, and you told a story about your father's funeral and how and how dangerous it was for you to go to the funeral and what happened there.
Yeah, because he told us never go to his funeral because we were going to be killed there. But we were so sad and that we were just willing to allow that such a thing could happen. So we went there. We didn't care.
Yes, and at certain point in time, did somebody approach you or you approached them? There's a certain woman appeared in your life.
Who?
Who was willing to help you get your new IDs and travel?
No, nobody. Actually, this happened because we tried so many times. We knock in every embassy, asking for help and asylum or whatever. That our lawyer said to us, the only way out that I see for you is if you legally change your name. That's the only way out I see. So we follow him, and he went to speak with the district attorney, national district attorney, and they offer collaboration in terms of keeping things secret, so our new identities won't come out to the press and publicly, because that would be the end of the. So there would be no point of doing that if our identities were going to be published. So we received the help, and actually at the same time, Mozambique was a part of the only country that approached to us and say, hey, perhaps we can receive you there.
But this is the thing. How did Mozambique approach you?
Because we publicly ask, we use the media and the international media to say to the world, we need a place to live. We are not asking for any kind of a special treatment. We just need a place to go. And they saw the opportunity. They approached to us like there was a kind of a humanitarian act.
Yeah.
But they were asking for $1 million for the humanitarian act. So it's like a very different type of humanitarian.
Yes, and
thing to
the
do.
woman who you had meeting with, who represented Mozambique, who was she?
Well, it's a mystery because we hardly remember her name and not her last name, and she was dressed like a
Countess or something.
Yeah, but something very, very unique and special, big hats and so. But she was there. She was like she was the one who saw the opportunity for the $1 million, the human, the charity.
Human charity that cost $1 million.
Yeah.
And you arranged with her, you got your new identities, you got your passports.
Yeah, and we went there, but there wasn't, first of all, there was no internet at the time. So it's not something that
That's
you just...
1994?
Yeah. So you don't Google Mozambique and you expect where to go. No, there was no Wikipedia, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. There was only the almanac. And there was only 2 lines that said that it was a Portugal colony, that it was the country with people were starving and more AIDS in the whole world. It was like the worst part on earth to live. That was the almanac said, only 2 lines.
Yeah.
So we went there and we were supposed to stay for 10 years and we just stayed during 4 days and that's it.
4 days.
Come back to Argentina.
Tell us, how was for you were 16 years old at the time, 17 years old?
Yeah, 17 approximately.
And your sister was?
11.
11 years old. And your mother, you and your sister,
And
you
my
were traveling from Bogota straight to Mozambique.
Yeah, but it was a longer trip.
Yeah, longer trip. And once you landed there, the description was pretty insane. So I want you to share a bit of it with us. How was the experience once you landed in Mozambique?
Okay, let me tell you the experience, and I'm sorry, but taking quite a while. So if you like to,
don't worry, just tell us.
Search at the end of the show because I need to go to the bathroom.
Don't worry, we can make a pause. You can go to the bathroom.
But it's. I think you had enough, more than an hour and a half.
Don't worry.
It's like a whole movie you already have here.
Yeah.
So, when we arrived to Mozambique, there was nothing. The supermarkets, they were open, but they had no food, no food at all. Not even water, nothing. So you can arrive there with $100,000 and you can do nothing with that. Money is useless because there's nothing to buy, there's no service to provide, nothing. So I felt like, okay, it's like this is a very, very strange place for us. And I prefer to live in Colombia. I don't care if I have to stay in an apartment without even opening the window, but at least I will have some food and some basic things that they don't have here. So it was very sad, you could see very little kids asking you for money because they were truly starving, they were really having the worst moments in their lives. There was a civilian war that just stopped like 3 days after when we arrived. It was just like people fearing. You could see, the gunshots in every wall. It was a very, very terrible place to be. Mm-hmm. So that's why we decided that, that was the second time in my life that I considered suicide as a way out, because I said, this is not the kind of life I want to, and you would see the sea. You said, well, at least there's a beach. You can go and take a little bit of sun and swim a bit. I said, no, you can go there because there are a lot of sharks. So I said, okay, not even, you cannot even swim here. So it was very horrible for us, and so we escaped. They were waiting for us to have a meeting in January, but we flew before that, before Christmas even.
Yes, and now one more thing before we finish this conversation. You flew back to Buenos Aires, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to Buenos Aires. And
we didn't have any plans to come back to Buenos Aires, but because in our way to Mozambique, we have to make one stop in Buenos Aires for one night, one layover, and then we continue our journey to Mozambique. So when we landed in Buenos Aires, as every tourist receive a 3-month visa. So it was a lot of time for us. 3 months, we were counting the seconds of our lives, and suddenly there was a country giving 3 months tourism visa. Come on, this is perfect for us. This is why we arrived to Argentina, and we stayed there. Every time the visa was going to finish, we went out of the country nearby and come back again, so we get another visa approval. It was very easy, and this is how we survived for the first year in Argentina. Then we applied for the permanent resident, and it took us like 4 to 5 years to achieve that. And then we ended up in jail because there was an accountant who stole money from us, and we went to the police to denounce him, and they let us inside the prison, because we were very stupid to allow anyone to steal our money.
Yeah.
And it took us 7 years to demonstrate that, because there was judges and the press saying that we were guilty, money laundering, blah, 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 blah. And during 7 years of our lives, we were in the media every day that we were criminals, until the Supreme Court set us free. And that day, nobody published anything.
Yeah, it's usually like that.
Yeah, it's usually the good news are not
nobody's
good
interested.
News for the media and for the business.
Nobody's interested in good news. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the world we're living in. And in Buenos Aires was the first time you actually drove public transport, used the public transportation, the bus.
Yeah, I enjoyed the privilege of being nobody in Buenos Aires during 5 years of my life.
Yes, but for in the beginning, you always wore big shades.
Yeah, because I didn't want it to be recognized anywhere. So I knew that our face was all over the world and could be easily related and connected with our real story, and that will put in danger our new identities and safety.
Yeah.
So, and knowing that our worst enemies was my father's family and not the cartels. Yeah, that was even harder because we need to take even more precautions because of them.
Yeah. And for the end, how's your sister?
Oh, she's doing great. She keeps, her life anonymously, and she's living a low-profile life, and we just want to protect her because she lived the same experiences that I lived, but she was even 7 years younger than me.
Yes.
So she has a different perspective, and we respect her way of seeing life. And she, of course, she supports me for what I'm doing, but she doesn't want to be part of the public show.
Yes, of course. Juan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gale.
Thank
it
you
was a pleasure and a great conversation.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience and for your goodwill. And
thank you. You truly study a lot of my stories.
Yes,
you can.
I try
You can write my next book.
Thank you very much. That's it. We have reached the end.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. To je to. Ćao.